This body was the victim of a criminal act. It is substantively and functionally no different from somebody throwing a rock through a window or firing a bullet. A crime is a crime. We suffered from that criminal act and continue to suffer from the criminal act, and I am a bit disturbed by the nonchalance with which some members are receiving that gross insult to the body. And I think it would be nice if we were to reflect on an oath each of us took in the very first week of January. That oath said, and we all swore to it, "I solemnly swear in the presence of Almighty God that I will well and faithfully support the Constitution of the United States, the laws of the United States applicable to Guam, and the laws of Guam, and that I will conscientiously and impartially discharge my duties as a member of I Liheslaturhan Guåhan." That was an oath taken before God, and it was an oath made to the people. We have suffered a crime. It is our duty. It is not our option. It is our duty to investigate that crime. This is not an issue for the Ethics Committee. This is not an issue that ought to be buried, never to see the light of day again. This is an issue which we must perform and investigate with alacrity and honesty, as well as a regard for the fact that not all of us, none of us, will continue in this body forever. We have an obligation to the institution of the legislature. If we receive an injury from outside or inside this body, we do not have an option on whether we are going to investigate it. We are going to investigate it. To sit back and assume that this was just one of those things that happens in the Guam legislature is wrong. Members who think along those lines are abjuring their responsibility to the people of Guam, and they are violating their oath. This issue is so straightforward and so obvious and so clear and so necessary that it is frankly disturbing that we are even debating it. I am more than a little concerned. I'm absolutely concerned that there is not more concern in this body for response to that crime. Ma'am, I look forward to hearing debate from members of the body. I look forward to hearing why I am mistaken in my belief that criminal activity against the people's legislature should not be investigated by the people's legislature. I've been practicing law for roughly 35 years in various places, but primarily here on Guam, of course, practicing law here for about 30 years. And in the course of that practice of law, I have grown to love the Constitution of the United States and the Organic Act very much. Ma'am, since I received the honor of having a chair in the 37th Guam Legislature, I've never entered this chamber without carrying a copy of the Constitution. I've never entered this chamber without carrying a copy of the Organic Act of Guam. I have a deep respect and a deep love for this House. I have a deep respect and a deep love for the executive branch of this island. I have deep respect and deep love for the judiciary of this island. These three entities came into being because of the genius of the creators of this union of which we are a part. Now, we can continue to have this union. We can continue to have this elective, democratic body, so long as we are willing to keep it. If we will not demonstrate a willingness to protect ourselves and our colleagues and the executive branch and the judiciary, then sure as night follows day, we will lose this institution, we will lose the Union. A senator of this House was endangered by a crime. A senator of this House was endangered by a lie. And I get the impression, I hope I am mistaken, that it doesn't bother some people, that they look at this as merely yet another political trick. It is indeed a political trick. It is indeed a crime. It is indeed a crime aimed at the very body in which we all sit. I sense, but do not know, that a political wind is blowing through this chamber right now. And that political wind is pushing people away from what they know to be the right thing to do. We, as a body, can certainly investigate this action despite what any other agency is doing. We have an obligation to get our house in order. We have an obligation to protect our friends in the House and in the legislature. How do we do that? We protect them by showing that we are in fact serious about our jobs. We are serious about their safety, and more importantly, we are serious about the truth, wherever it leads us. That we might allow the political wishes of an individual to pervert the House, to inject a perverse act into this House, and do nothing brigades this body with shame. I ask that all members of the House join in support of this resolution and purge this body of any such shame. An individual has risen and characterized what this resolution attempts to do as a political witch hunt. It's difficult to understand how it might be a witch hunt when the evidence before us, as we have already heard, demonstrates the crime. We actually have the criminal instrument. This is no witch hunt. This is a hunt for the truth. This is a hunt to root out those individuals who have no love for this body, those individuals who have no love for the Constitution, those individuals who have no love for the Organic Act of Guam, and those individuals who have no love for Guam. How is it possible that you could espouse an affection, a love for your island, yet assist in destroying a pillar of the society? How is it possible you could espouse a love for Guam, yet turn a blind eye to a crime that is affecting this House? That conclusion, that we need not investigate, is not readily comprehensible. This, as I said in the opening remarks, is such an obvious thing to do that the fact that we stand here in support and opposition of it is puzzling. Support is obvious. Opposition is baffling. I repeat, how is it possible for my brothers and sisters not to want to protect me? Why do they turn a blind eye to an assault on me? How could they have so little regard for me? I too am a member of the legislature. I too am subject to this sort of wound. Now, Madam Speaker, it was not hyperbole when a senator earlier stated that the individual who was the named victim of this act was placed in physical danger. One of the things I learned when I became an adult and entered the workforce is you never interfere with another individual's paycheck. You don't know what that paycheck is going towards. You don't know what kind of anger a threat to that paycheck may engender. A person is living paycheck to paycheck. They're trying to figure out how they're going to stretch their prescription medicines till the end of the month because they can't buy anymore. And this additional stressor is alleged. I tell you, Madam Speaker, that is the sort of action which may engender rage among an individual, which may have an obvious and perhaps a not so obvious consequence. The point being that I was endangered, the named individual was endangered, 13 of my other brothers and sisters were endangered, and some people are willing to turn a blind eye to that. I am not. As I said, I love this house. This house consists of 15 of my brothers and sisters, as well as the legislative staff. I have an obligation to protect them. They have a mutual obligation to protect me. We will do so by investigating this incident. We will do so by investigating this incident, and we will follow the evidence wherever it goes. Earlier, one of my colleagues expressed concern that this had not procedurally met what this individual felt was required. While I respect that argument, I disagree with the conclusion. Now, this is an emergent situation, Madam Speaker, an emergent situation. It is not something that can wait for the next session for an obvious reason. Criminals hide the tools of their trade. This is called evanescent evidence. That is the reason why when you get pulled over for drinking and driving, the police can take your blood. It's clearly a Fourth Amendment search, but the courts allow it because that evidence disappears and has a tendency to slip away from us and slip away from our hands. It's evanescent. Hard drives are being scrubbed. Smartphones are being lost. Any other device, any memorandum, anything that implicates somebody is now being destroyed. And that is the reason this is an emergency. We need not stand or sit idly by while the wound is exacerbated, while salt is rubbed into that wound. We have an obligation to act. It is simply that clear. Now, it has also been raised as, I believe, a bit of a red herring, that this is an issue which should go to the Ethics Committee. I would ask us to think about whether or not, if a shooter, God forbid, were outside the hall and fired a bullet through the window, that is a matter which should be referred to the Ethics Committee. I won't go into the technical aspect of the fact that there's absolutely no jurisdiction for the Ethics Committee to act in this matter unless it was one of us who behaved in this way. That is simply non sequitur. It is a non-starter. It is a red herring. I would be surprised if any colleague relied on that train of thought. Now, another gentleman suggested that the legislature had also conducted a preliminary, I believe was the word used, and investigation for very good reasons. I'm sure the morale...
Point of personal privilege, Madam Speaker, the word was cursory.
Cursory.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the correction. I'm sorry, is there a...
Please proceed, Senator Fisher.
Yeah, thank you very much, ma'am. I'll just amend that and say a cursory investigation. The fact, and I congratulate him on doing that, I understand precisely why he's doing that. He's got a staff that I'm sure is demoralized by Mr. Jansen's actions. However, the existence of that cursory investigation reveals why this must go forward. Questions have to be answered. Why was this falsity dropped, so to speak, in the course of a debate? What was the intent behind the dropping of this false amendment? That statement by the gentleman who has begun the investigation indicates that this investigation should go forward. Now, ma'am, ma'am, I will close now. I will close by just making the observation that we are, all of us, in this together. We, all of us, must have each other's backs, so to speak. We must conduct this investigation wherever it goes. Thank you very much, ma'am.